Okay, welcome back, everyone. I apologize for my long absence again. I came down with a cold. I still have a little bit of a residual cough, but struggling through, and we're going to make it. So today, my plan is to try and get caught up on the material design stuff. The 4.0 release is well later than what I would have liked. So my goal is to actually try and clear out as many of the blockers for it as possible, which includes going back to some of the really old PRs. So currently, the oldest PR that is open has to do with the DrawerHost. So that is where we are going to begin. Oop, wrong button. That's the button we want. Okay, so what am I talking about? Let's start here. So this is the old PR that's in here. So the idea is that the DrawerHost, as we have it, is basically designed to implement the navigation drawer from the material design spec. Now, there's a few things about it that we already kind of violate. So this thing has a lot of directions in it about minimum sizes and scrolling and elevation and all of that. And as far as this library is concerned, we don't enforce that. I think it's good practice, and people should probably adhere to it when reasonable within your apps. But that's on you to make sure that the widths and whatnot and everything lines up. What our current drawer host doesn't do is right now we basically have the modal drawer is what it is. And ours lets you open it from all four sides. This one very explicitly says only do left. Again, whatever. Not going to stress about it. If you want to open all four, have at it. But specifically, we have the modal drawer. That is, when the drawer slides out, it sits on top of the content. There's an overlay fade over the rest of the content so you can't interact with it. If you click on it, light dismiss, that thing goes away, all that jazz, right? And so the goal here is to also implement the standard drawer, right? So the standard drawer is a little different than the modal drawer, whereas rather than sitting on top of the content, it slides out and sort of pushes the content to the side so that you can get access to it. Now, I do have out on one of my samples examples, this guy. Out here, I do have a DrawerHost setup where I called it push template. So this is a complete retemplating of the DrawerHost, right? So I took the existing template and got rid of everything I didn't want and changed it so that it makes content push to the side and slide out. So I think what we can likely do is leverage a bit of this to actually bring this in as part of it. Now, there's a couple options here that I'm a little torn between. I think what I would like to do is rather than having a separate style that people have to go and know to use. Hey, Robert, welcome back. I think rather than having a separate style, the goal is going to be to have something like this, where there's just a property on the DrawerHost that you can toggle to open and close. Now, this one has some slightly different verbiage, and as you can see, this PR was opened 2017, so it's a little old. It's a little old. And as you might imagine, been sick, Robert. Has not been great for me. I still have a bit of a residual cough, but I've got my fix for it. So I've got my liquid medicine. But yeah, I think for this, what we're going to do is try and simplify this down and get this close to what we want. So I actually did take. So I took the old PR. Yes, it is. I took the old PR. I squashed all of its commits into one. I rebased those commits onto master. I ignored every single merge conflict that was in the demo app and said, throw every single one of those away. I'm only interested in keeping the DrawerHost changes themselves, right? And then I went through and did a little cleanup after the rebase just to get stuff back into a compiling state and clean up some warnings and make everyone happy, right? So that's more or less where we're at. So the key changes here that came in from the PR was a few template changes, but I don't know as if we want to keep them. So there's an open mode property that got added. Let's see. Do you watch the cartoon Rick and Morty? No, and in fact, I don't know as if I've ever heard of it. Can I Google this? Is this safe? I'm sorry. Can I Bing this? Hang on. We'll do it over here real quick. I don't know if I've ever seen this. Is this good? Is this worth adding to a queue? I assume this is what we're talking about here. It got fairly, that's got pretty good ratings. Huh. This looks interesting. I'm going to add this to a queue. So I'm going to put that over there. That will circle back to. The other thing about this PR is it does the animation stuff in the code behind based upon the open mode, and I'm thinking we can clean this up. I'm somewhat tempted to attack this from a clean state as well and just go at it from there. That feels okay. I think that's what we're going to start with. So scratch this. We're going to just branch off of master, and I think we're going to try and just attack this from there. Let's see. DrawerHost, right? Because this is something that that sample from my examples project is something I've ended up using several times myself, and so I do want some of those changes. Okay, so let's go through and let's figure out what exactly we need here. So I think what I would like to do, let's start with, I think we're just going to start with an enum, right? So public enum open mode, and all enums should have a 0th kind of defaulting none, unknown, etc. member. But I think what we're going to do, in the interest of trying to not break everybody, right? And I don't really like these names. Nope, that's Rick and Morty. Boom. But the standard and modal seem to match the material design spec. So we're gonna go with it. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. This doesn't fill me with warm fuzzies. I don't know if it needs to, but it feels like yeah, we're gonna go with it just because it matches the spec. Gross humor, but it's example of nihilism. Things that software does. Oh, okay. I'll give it a shot. I've been sort of on the hunt for something to watch. Typically, when I'm working on stuff in the evening, I usually will turn on something. It normally baffles my wife how I can. I like to have something that I'm watching. I'll usually take an app called On Top Replica, and just make a small version of whatever I'm watching down in the corner of my screen, and then carry on working with whatever I'm doing. So usually I'll watch things that way, and she doesn't quite understand how I can focus on two things at once. It seems easy. They're both on the screen. I look at the screen. How hard could it be? Okay, so let's come down here, and it's easy. I do the same. Maybe it's a programmer thing. Maybe that's all it is. Okay, so we want a, let's see, WPF. What is it? Prop. Let's see. We want a full dependency property. We want it to be of type open mode. Open mode. Open mode. Okay, and let's see. Expression body that beast. Expression body that beast. And then type of owner class. DrawerHost. And I'm going to be a little more explicit here. I'm wondering if this should actually be called DrawerHost open mode, because this is, yeah, let's make this, because this is going to live outside of the control and sort of the root namespace. So let's make this a little more obvious what it is. Okay, so there's that. There's that. Okay, so then let's go and update the demo app so that we can use it. Because at the end of the day, if I can't use it, what's the point? Okay, so down here, let's see, we've got 3 row definitions. These are all set. This grid is centered. I think I can just do this. Give me one more thing. And let's do a stack panel. Oh, hey, that's not what I wanted. Try that. Radio button. Let's see, content. Default / modal. Right? And then we'll do one that's standard. Then maybe a text block with some text that says open mode. Right? Something akin to that. And then ultimately we want to bind these to it. What's the easiest way to go about this? Because ultimately I want an isChecked. Because ultimately I want to bind the isChecked property of this guy. Relative, I think this is going to end up being a value converter. Let's see, relative source. Let's see, ancestor type. DrawerHost. Oh, it's going to be material design. Oh, and this will be find ancestor. Not to completely from your async patterns and MVVM. Ooh. Oh, you pulled a 2014 article. Wow. And yes, I am happy to. Stephen Cleary. Boy, I recognize that name. 404, that's not helpful. Asynchronous data bound. Interesting. A better approach. Oh, wow. Don't do this. This must have been before. No, they've got async and await. Why the heck? Oh, bad code. Well, that explains that. I agree with that statement. A better approach. Notify task completion. Wow. Watch task property changed. Hoy vey. Hoy vey. All of this to effectively give a task an I notify property change. Oh, yuck, 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 yuck. No, 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 no. Okay. Better example. Better example. And actually, let me just pop open my examples repo, because if I'm going to talk to this, maybe we just write a sample while we're at it. So, inside of MVVM, there's typically 2 places where you want to end up using async code that makes it a pain. Option 1 is inside of some sort of data bound property, right? User, checks a radio button, for example. And you want to end up going through and saying, okay, when this gets checked, kick off some asynchronous action, right? The other one is usually as part of a command handler, right? Is you kick off a command and you want to effectively go and run a command. The problem is commands are effectively like top-level event handlers. And so you run into the problem of they're effectively void methods. And the signature of I command dictates that they must be. And so you run into the problem of how do I handle that? So let's see, what do we got here? I got validation, basic. I don't know why I nested that one. Don't know why. Okay, so let me just make sure I'm in a clean state before I get too carried away. Looks like there's something showing here. Was this just testing? This looks like I was just testing something. Okay, throw that away. Pull up on latest. Also, wonderful gentleman has been writing great readmes for the projects. So it's been wonderful. I very much appreciate it. But as you can tell, there's 100-something projects in this repo. It's kind of big. Okay, so let's do a new one. So which cases are you, I guess, interested in, Robert? All of the above, or is it more around like data-bound properties and or commands? And next. Next button. There we go. Let's do MVVM. Let's call it async, right? So, and it's also worth noting there are. I'm going to approach this from the standpoint of what's built into the box, right? There are things like reactive and IObservable that offer an alternative way of handling this. The problem is Rx isn't always something that's easily available, and ultimately at the end of the day you kind of still have to handle this situation. I think I just want to be here, right? MVVM async, blah blah blah. Yeah. Next. And go gadget. Why are you going so doggone slow, Visual Studio? Come on. Choppa. Move it. So let's start off with the common problem. When a property is bound, it changes, kicking off another async process. Okay. So at the end of the day, they both kind of boil down to similar bits. And the first and most important thing to be aware of is that these are going to be async void members, right? And the biggest issue with async void is if you end up throwing an exception out of an async void method, there's nowhere for that exception to bubble up to. So it goes to your top level, potentially app domain exception handler, and then your app crashes. So whenever dealing with async void stuff, be very conscious of anything that could potentially throw, and you usually want to start wrapping things in try catches to either handle the exceptions or understand that it's going to be an app crash if you don't, right? Because normally with nice async and await, part of what the async and await does is nicely bubble exceptions back up in the manner that you would expect, right? You know, if you've awaited all of your async methods all the way down, it properly bubbles the exception all the way back up in the reverse direction. Everyone's happy. With async void, no such love, right? Because at the point where that exception gets thrown, it doesn't have anywhere to bubble back to. The original caller's gone and left. And so you're left with, I don't know, blow up and die. So that's bad. Don't let that happen. Hello, Visual Studio. What is going on? Hoi vey. Apparently I'm shutting down Edge because Edge is apparently allocating. I don't know what you're doing, Edge. But when Edge is taking up more memory than multiple instances of Visual Studio, we have a problem. Okay, that should give me back memory and CPU power. Okay, Visual Studio, would you like to catch up and actually instantiate a project for me? Anytime that you're ready. Loading template description. Something tells me this should not be a long-running process. Come on. You can do it. You can do it, Visual Studio. I believe in you. I call that uncharted territory. Present a message box and send myself an email. Ah, yes, the faithful old. Okay, we might be terminating Visual Studio and just restarting it here real quick. I think it's lost its mind. Because I think I can relaunch and get through this a little quicker than whatever the heck it's doing. Though now my question is, did it just go and create me a project or not? Oh, loading template description, uncharted territory. Ah, yes. Okay, so it did nothing. Got it. Okay, so this should not be hard. New project, right? I wonder if my get crack and reset caused it to lose its mind as well. I am running latest previews of Visual Studio, and I have noticed that it always seems like after a major release goes out, right afterwards, that's when they push all of the risky changes and stuff breaks. Though, this is causing me some concern. Why is this? Hello? Last I checked, opening the list of templates should not be hard. So, MVVM Async. I would like you to go into the MVVM folder, pretty please. Next. And now we see if we can load this template's description. While it thinks about what it's doing. This was not supposed to be creating the creating the project was not supposed to be the hard part. See, this is that is about how hard it should have been. Kind of like that, right? No idea why you've lost your mind, Visual Studio. Go ahead and kill you again. And go ahead and pop Explorer, and we're just going to do this the old-fashioned way. I don't know whether you've lost your mind because I've got a ton of projects or what. We're just going to do it this way. Okay. Okay, so step one, we're going to go and grab ourselves a NuGet package. Let's see. And I want to include pre-release. Let's see. Microsoft Toolkit MVVM. That one, pretty please. This is the updated replacement for MVVM Lite. I think I've shown this one to you before, Robert, but it has basically everything you would expect out of there. But in our case, I'm just interested in quick and dirty view model. Okay, so add new item. Come on. You are struggling today. Main window view model. I've gone to this as well. Excellent. Observable object. So we'll do something like that. That'll give us the notify property changed magics. And we're good to go. Okay, so let's do a, let's see, private bool is checked, right? And then public bool is checked. And we'll do kind of standard implementation here. Is checked. Boy, I am struggling. But down here, we're going to end up doing this, right? So set ref is checked and value. I'm sorry. Set property. Got to get the right method. So raise notify property change on true. Do async work, right? Okay, so let's go down here and let's just make something up, right? So we are going to move some of this off. So the first thing I like to do is it's important to note that these get set members these have set signatures that you can't change, right? Like the set ends up generating method with a bool return, single parameter, etc. that comes in as value, right? So this is a very fixed signatures. So I generally try to keep my properties thin-ish and push off things like asynchronous stuff out into other methods, right? And obviously, in general, if you can avoid needing to trigger based on the property, that is best, but obviously that's not always reasonable, right? So let's do private async task do long running work, right? So we're gonna bring something like this in. We will do await task delay for time span. Hey, come on. From seconds, maybe a second and a half, right? Long enough to be obvious, not long enough to make me bored, right? And then let's go here and do something like private string data, right? Just so that we have some way of effectively updating and indicating when we were done, right? So string data get data set, and this one we're gonna keep this one simple. Set property data value, and so this way we'll just do data gets starting work, and I think what we're gonna do private int counter, right? I think what we're going to do is come in here. I'm intentionally setting myself up for a threading problem. So if people are noticing that, that's intentional. Actually, let's data something like this. Completed work counter, right? So something akin to this. Obviously, you can probably imagine, you know, any other long-running async task, but this will get us to what we want. So do long-running work, right? And so this is where you start to immediately run into problems, right? Because you'll start to get this warning right out the gate saying, "Hey, hang on, you've got a problem here. This is not awaited stuff. This is something that's actually going to cause problems." So typically what I will do is I will do something like async void start long running work, right? And this guy here serves one purpose, right? So I do this. And then inside of here, this is where I generally would do something like put in my try catch, right? Because exception to do log or handle to prevent app crash, right? So we need to do something about here, but then we come down here and we go await do long running work, right? So this gets us at least out of the problem of the warning. And generally, async void is something to be avoided. The exceptions being top-level event handlers, right? So click events, right? The problem being is inside of MVVM, the effective click event is hidden away from us, right? We aren't watching for is check changed, right? Which would be the event that you would end up watching for on your checkbox. We just have a bound property. We don't watch the click event on our button. We just have a command invocation, right? So same type of thing. So most of the time, I would consider either command handlers or bound properties like these top-level event handlers, because if you were to drop MVVM and do this in code behind, this would effectively be done as a top-level event handler, right? So that's my justification for why the async void is justified and why I would consider this a top-level event handler. I separate this out only to bring something like this apart. So let's actually put something out on our window so we can break it, because this code doesn't actually fully work, which is exciting, right? Let's see, stack panel. So let's go with checkbox, content toggle me is checked, binding, what did I call that thing, is checked, and then how about a text block, text binding data. All right, so very simple. We'll just, thank you, appreciate that. Let's see, data context gets new, main window, view model. Sometimes I've done simple ones like this straight in the XAML. The only problem I have with that is then people don't understand the times when you need to switch out of the XAML, and then I get questions. So I've just started to do that. Okay, so fire this off. And then, oh, I didn't. Yay. Horizontal alignment, center, right? Okay, so this gets us right here, toggle me. So I toggle it, starting work 1, completed work 1, right? Now the problem is when I do right? Oh, come on, I gotta get this timing in. Man. Oh, because they're all, grumble, grumble, grumble. Hang on. You're right. There does need to be a little margin in here. Margin 3. And I just realized that I have a int counter gets plus counter. I just realized, I was like, why is it working every time? Well, because I'm lying to myself. Okay, now that should get me into the bad state, right? Because the whole idea is, as I'm toggling this, I should be queuing up multiple of these things, multiple of these runs, right? So you can see how that, as I'm toggling this, it's queuing up a whole bunch of items. And unfortunately, they're completing in order, which is really unfortunate. You can see a couple of them going out of order. But in general, these shouldn't be coming in evenly. You gave yourself a local variable. Yeah. The idea being is I'm trying to make the point that because this is triggering every single time, every toggle, this is going to kick off and start running another task, right? It's going to, or I should say, it's going to queue up another task to be run. And by doing that, we're going to effectively have multiple things happening. And so oftentimes, if you want to get this down to where it only goes one at a time, right? So let's imagine that we want to get this down to where we can debounce it, so that we only run this once, right? We don't want to have multiple things going. One option is you could do a lock, right? And that would work. Except for it's going to then queue things up and then go one at a time, right? So private object, let's see, sync lock gets new object, right? And so if we come in here, oh, well, shoot, that's not going to work. Yeah, let's see, semaphore or slim. There we go. Wow. Typing hard. Typing very, very hard. And then we are going to do 1, 1, right? And something like that. Something like that. And then we can come in here and we can go await, sync lock, wait async, right? And then try finally, and then let's do sync lock release, right? Try get some lock release on finally, right? Yeah, and so then you end up with this situation where you can queue up all of these things, they'll get going, and then eventually it'll catch up, right? It just queued up a whole bunch of those things for each of those toggles, and eventually it gets around to it. The problem being is that a lot of times this isn't what you want, especially if you're bound to, say, a Boolean property, right? At the end of the day, you really want to say, if true, go through and queue it up, and maybe false, stop the thing, right? And now that's where we start to get a little more interesting. So let's pass value. How about bool do work? How about do this to make tasks run one at a time. All right, and we're just gonna whack this bit, right? And then, because the other option here is basically around the debounce, right? And how do we go through and do that? So private int is running. All right, so we come in here, and then what we use is if interlocked dot compare exchange. So I don't know if we've talked about it, Robert, about atomic operations, right? So the idea being that the atomic operations will happen in a single cycle, and you can't get a halfway state, right? So you can guarantee that this guy here can both do a comparison and an assignment in a single instruction, which is awesome, right? There's no way to get a halfway state. So this guy here, we go, let's see, it's ref is running, and then I use an int like a bool because you can't use a bool here, right? And I'm trying to remember if it's 1. So compares to, let's see, and it replaces the first value. So if, let's see, I want to compare with 0 and replace with 1, and the return value is the original. Oh, I just saw it. No, go back. And the returns the original value. So if the original value was 0, meaning we weren't running, then we'll go in here and do it, right? And then interlocked exchange ref is running 0, right? So if do work, we'll just do that for the moment. Actually, for now, we're gonna leave it like this. So this will get us something similar, though I'm gonna go click, and I expect it to stop queuing them, right? And I only got 1. Click it again, 2, right? And I can click this as many times as I want, and at the end of the day, it's only going to run 1 at a time, right? So this is effectively debouncing is what we're looking for, right? But what we want to do is more like do work, right? And then more importantly, we want the false case, right? So, and actually let's just make it a little clearer. If do work, right? So we're going to take this, just block the UI with a busy signal. And that works. The one thing you have to watch out for, and you can usually get away with it pretty easily if you set it up right away. You just want to make sure that if you block the UI, it needs to occur before the await, and you need to make sure that you don't do an asynchronous binding for this setter, right? Otherwise, there's the chance that the rapid double click can get multiple things passed, right? Because if you block the UI, again, it's fine. You just want to make sure you trigger the block while you're still on the UI thread before multiple clicks can get all the way in, right? And that's ultimately where this guy goes. And then we're going to go here. And then what we want to do, you get all the way down here. I'm going to just keep going. I'm going to keep going because I'm on a roll at this point. Might as well finish out the whole sample. All right? And this now comes back into the idea of making sure we have actually here. Probably should put these in separate methods. Comment this. Do this for debounce. Right? And we're going to comment this. Because the other one, what we can do, I have good use of the try the worst case passes. So the path you're going down is probably where I've landed. So this one down here is, or I should say the last place that I wanted to go and get this to. So private cancellation token source, right? Cancellation, or let's just do this, CTS. All right, so we're going to come down here. And what I'm going to do is once again go back, because you'll note that I do my darndest in all of these to avoid having to use locks, because locks just slow things down. They're kind of obnoxious, right? So if you can go with lockless, if you can get synchronization without locks, do it, because it lets you do all kinds of awesomeness, right? So we're going to do, let's see, absolutely avoid locks at all costs. So we're going to do an exchange, and this is going to look a little weird. Let's see, CTS, new, cancel, I think I want to do it like this. Var CTS gets new cancellation token source, right? And I want to do CTS, and then I want to, so this guy will return back the old one. And we're going to cancel off, if there was one there, we will cancel off another one. We'll cancel any of the other one. Do long-running work. CTS token. All right, so we'll get into there, and we'll do the await. And then what we're going to end up doing down here is catch operation canceled exception, right? And just suppress those. So now we get, it's not necessarily debounce, and depending on what you're doing, oftentimes I land somewhere between a mix of something in the middle. But if we run this guy now, because I'm guessing this is what you meant by close to what you ran into or have gotten to, right? So I can now queue these guys up, and you'll note it's starting the work, but then it's killing off all of the ones that were there. So rather than debouncing, it effectively allows me to just keep queuing this guy until I get to the very end, and then it only lets the last one in, right? Because with debounce, you keep the first one and throw away subsequent ones. With a pattern like this, last in wins, and you cancel previous ones, with the idea being that, for whatever reason, the latest one has the most up-to-date data, right? Like maybe you're queuing off some save, right? It's like, oh, you know, heaven forbid you're doing it with the user types. That's probably a bad idea, right? But something where, you know, data's coming in, hey, I want to kick off a save, and that sort of things. Debounce, first in wins, all others fail. Yeah, and it really depends. Like, there's not one right answer. Because, like I said, I usually end up with somewhere in this vicinity, and it depends on what it is, right? And it really just depends on what is the expected experience. Do you want to get the last one, or do you want to get the first one? And at the end of the day, the way I end up handling command methods is actually not too unlike this. So I'll just show that real quick. So var command gets new relay command. So if you can imagine something like wanting to do this, what I usually end up doing is make an async void method as the command handler, right? So, on command, right? And then I will have that be the async void, have the async void deal with the exception handling so that that's clear. And other than that, its sole purpose is to shell out into the one that's going to legitimately do the work. That way, from this point down, I'm all async await TPL. Don't need to worry about anything else. I let the top level handler deal with the problems, and then we move on our merry way, right? So something akin to that. So they both kind of end up in the same situation, and then you end up with this. I will probably clean up this sample. I think what I'm going to do is do like 3 columns, right? One with each of these in here, showing the different cases so that people can see how to handle this. Because this is not the first time somebody has asked, how do I appropriately handle this? But I think this is, yeah. Like I said, at the end of the day, the key thing to note is I try to force the pattern of do the async void as high up as I actually can get it, right? And since I can't set async void inside of the property, shelling out into a private method. Same thing with like the commands method. And then the other bit of making sure the async void handles exceptions so that I don't have app crashes unexpectedly, right? And then try to get out of the async void and keep this as thin as possible. Because if you're writing any sort of unit tests or whatnot against it, this guy here is usually pretty much untestable or difficult to test depending on the situation. However, if he contains almost no logic and all of the work actually goes into this guy now becomes testable. Yeah. Though when you say message box, are you shelling back out to like the old WinForms message box that's modal and blocks, or are you doing or some other message box with like Telerik or MAPS or Material Design or something? Somebody that supports an async message box. Telerik message box. Is the Telerik one, is that just a blocking static call, or is it an awaitable call? I'm trying to think. I don't know what they do. Because I know they've got a themed message box. I'm just not sure if they themed it over the top of like window or if they did something fancier. Okay, I'm going to leave this open so that I can come back now that I've been completely derailed. Thank you, Robert. At least I got a good sample out of it, right? Like this will make for a nice write-up of doing of when to use async void. I'm actually so I'm teaching again at EWU this quarter, and at the end of it we're going to be doing WPF. I think it's inherited from WinForm message box with more features. Got it. Okay, so static calls, same type of thing. Okay, gotcha. At the end of that class, we're going to end up doing WPF work because part of it is they are supposed to learn GUI as part of the class, and because I'm an instructor and told to teach GUIs, I teach WPF because reasons. Because that's what's awesome. Okay. So before I was mildly distracted, we were doing something radio button. Let's see. Anytime, Robert. I'm always happy. If people have questions, I'm always happy to go and derail and answer a question because if one person has a question, odds are somebody else will probably have the same question. Okay, so this guy here is going to be a bind to the open mode, right? But then I need to go between... Why are you squawking at me? That goes to that one. That goes to that one. I got too many closing braces. There. I think we just go value converter here and be done with it. Multi-value equality converter. Yeah, I think we're just confidence booster. Always happy to boost your confidence, Robert. Let's just do a value converter. Public class R equal value converter, right? So I Whew. Still have a little mucus in my throat that has not gone away yet. Okay, step 1. Go to your own file. Step 2, implement interface. Let's see. I appreciate the compliment, Robert. Let's see. Maybe we don't do this. I'm trying to think, because how do you do the false case, right? So you know what? This is a lot of effort to support this, and the whole point is this thing should just show something simple. Okay, so ditch the radio button idea. Use the correct control for the job, right? Is this combo box? There we go. There we go. Now we're talking. Let's see. Combo box. Nope. I know how to do XML. I've done this before. I'm not as dumb as I look. Let's see. So combo box item, and then I want DrawerHost open mode. That, and I want you to be modal. Oh. Typing's hard. Typing's hard. Okay, so what are you squawking about? Modal was not found. Yes, it was. It's there, I promise. You just don't realize it. Here, let me help you. All right? And actually, we can probably do this a little cleaner rather than nested. So I'll let you think about what you've done for a moment. Everyone happy? Great. Because I think we can actually get away with something a little easier if we just do x static material design there. That's probably a little cleaner, and then we can self-close it. Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay. And so then this guy here just becomes selected item binding. Let's see. Open mode, relative source, find ancestor, type, material design, DrawerHost. Something kind of like that. I think that works. Let's just confirm that this does in fact work, because that would be convenient. All right, so we come here, drawer something. Well, so aside from the fact that A, it's not selected, system windows, controls, combo box item. Okay, so that is not quite what we wanted. and this is not quite located where we wanted it. So this needs to end up being in grid row 3, grid column 0, grid row or column span, right? And we'll span all 3 of them, horizontal alignment, center. So that should get it. That's more or less where I want that. Some sort of top margin to make it look a little less dumb. Kind of separate it off from the buttons. Let's go a little more. Yeah, that looks a little better. Maybe a little bottom margin to give that so that the text box doesn't look like it's sitting right on top. That's probably better. Okay, let's see. So selected, let's see, because this guy here is, let's see, combo box. Why can I not remember how to do? I thought it was you just embed this directly, right? Snoop. Let's take a look. Is it selected? Because I'm using selected item, and maybe it's supposed to be selected value. So let's just grab Snoop and we'll take a look. Button, combo box, selected index, selected value. Let's see. How about selected value path? Yeah, we'll just do that. Let's see. So does that, before I get too carried away, does that change selected? Yeah, so this needs to be from selected item, selected value, and we'll go with selected value path content, right? Yeah, I agree. I always get myself a little bit bound around the axle, but okay. So that gets me to there, that gets me to there. More importantly, I can see that guy toggle. And then what I want to do is go up here and look at, just to make sure the binding's going in both directions. Modal standard, great. Let's refresh this and just make sure initial ones. Yeah, the enums being value types. There's fancy ways with arrays and whatnot, but I usually like to wrap them. I know that it will wrap individual items in the default, what is it, container source. But yeah, so now my open mode is set up. Well, that looks a little tight. Oh, that's why that looks a little tight. Because that may put some space there. I need, let's just move this guy down onto here. That way I can put some bottom margin and it will, yeah. There, that gets a little better. And then if we go double that up, there. Regardless. Okay, so the important part though is now that we've got this DrawerHost, right? So we want to be able to have something that pushes, right? So when the mode changes, we want to not necessarily slide to the side, or I should say not overlay the content. We want to push it in. So I think we can do this. I think we can do this just in XAML. That's my goal. Let's see. DrawerHost. And there's going to be a weird situation in what happens if we toggle I'm wondering if we should have separate visual states, right? So not just open, closed, but open modal, because closed is easy, right? Closed is closed, right? But I'm wondering if we should have, and this is called pop-up states. I don't know if that's probably, this is for a 4.0 release. We can break everything if we want. Okay, I'm wondering if it makes more sense. Yeah. Oh, hold up. I'm in the wrong file. That's why this looks confusing. That's not the right assembly. Let's go here. Down here, I do not want to mess with the dialog host. That is the wrong thing. I want the drawer host. What? Does DrawerHost not have its own thingy-mabobber? Must be in generic then. Let's take a look. Well, we might be... I don't need to break it out. It's good to break it out from an organization standpoint, but the fewer dictionaries you have, it's actually a performance benefit. So I might not necessarily break it just yet. Okay, so all closed, any open, all closed, any open. So I think, let me go and look at, yeah, I kind of killed all your stuff, didn't I? That's right, because you decided that you were going to chew up all my memory. That is big. That is very big. I actually have an idea for a web API that if I get hugely motivated on, I might go and build real quick. Is I would love to have an API where I can feed it an image and have it detect text on the image that is either too small or doesn't have a reasonable contrast ratio for the purpose of presentations, right? And then have it feed me back, a list of rectangles of, hey, this text is too small, and then, I can do with that what I want. But that's one of my things that it would be a cool little thing to build out. And I've got all of the pieces for it. I just don't have them all together. Okay, so this is basically the same stuff, and I'm assuming that if I look at these two thingies, what I'm going to find, I'm going to make these a little bit smaller so I can see. Let's go up to the top, that these things are pretty much going to be the same. So content cover. So why does this guy still have a content cover? Does he just have a dead item hanging out down here that's not being used? Interesting. Microsoft doesn't already have this? Well, they don't exactly have it. And I would love to build something specifically for the purpose of like I would use it inside of OBS or inside of Teams when I'm looking at presentations, right? Or I could see a PowerPoint plugin. But I'm not aware of anything or any API that just does that. My plan would be to use something like Cognitive Services to feed the image in to say, find me all of the text areas. And then I've got the code that we wrote for material design that can check contrast ratios, right? It's just a matter of pull out the text color, pull out the background color for the text, and there's probably a little bit of magic in figuring out, what's the background color if it's not on a solid background, and do some checking there. So there's a little bit of guesstimation in that regard of figuring out what makes sense to do there. But then things like size is pretty simple, right? There's a little bit of a subjectiveness of how big should it be, but ultimately my plan would be assume people are on laptops with like 14-inch screens and figure out what that reasonable size needs to be and use that as a baseline, right? Because if you're sharing content for a presentation, you don't know what the people watching are going to be at, whether they're going to be tiny or not, which is why when I'm usually coding for this, I tend to run my font bigger than what I normally would, just because I don't know what people are going to watch this at, and I'd like it to be a little bigger. So this guy has it. Or legally blind. That's true as well. Actually, Robert, you might be a good use case then. What is the font size that you run stuff at where you find it to be reasonably visible, right? Like, is the stuff I'm showing on screen at like, for example, my Visual Studio, if I set this to 100%, right? Is this readable or not? Ironically, your current screen to the left is readable. Okay. That's good to know. Right? Just barely. Okay. Well, so that's one thing that I've actually noticed is in general, what I've heard is people say for presentations, favor a very high contrast ratio theme, and this is not a high contrast ratio theme on the right. Whereas the dark mode for GitHub is very much a high contrast ratio or a significantly higher contrast ratio. So maybe I probably need to either get used to the high contrast ratio theme in Visual Studio or maybe poke around at some of the other custom themes to see. But that is good to know because I might use you as my baseline of what is readable, right? Okay, so this guy has the same content cover. I kind of want to see what this guy does with it because I'm surprised that I left this in. I think I left it in because it's used. This is the kicker. This guy has, when visibility goes here, it goes off, and this guy is just turning it off, right? So even though it's there, it's basically, it's an element that's there and just never used. So I think this guy probably becomes a multi-trigger. What is the status on the Discord channel? Oh, that's a great question. I've done nothing with it. Let me, hang on, Robert. I'm going to take a note real quick. And I will follow up with you on it. Because because I will get that. Can I help you with that? Yes, you can. I do have a Discord thingy already set up. And so I think what I need to probably do is invite you and give you rights. Because right now I'm pretty sure it's me, and me in it. But let me get follow up with you because I initially set it up, but I'm like, oh, I should pull in the icons and all the theming and all that jazz, and then I just never touched it. So let me. I have a note. I will get you added, and then I will shoot you a message, and we can go from there. Okay, so this part content cover is one of the key differences between them, but I think this is easy, right? This is probably the simplest. And so let's just do this while we're here, right? So this becomes, rather than a trigger, right? And I'm going to make you bigger. Because this guy has opacity 0 go to hidden, right? And this guy here just says opacity always sits at 0 and background goes to null, right? Whereas this other one has background set here. And I think what we do is we change this, right? So we're going to go setter property background, right? Value is going to pick up this guy. Right, so we'll slap that guy in there. And then, hey, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Let's see. So that goes like that. That goes like that. And then down here, we're going to do trigger. And we will trigger on property open mode, right? Open mode. Value is going to be standard. Right? So that's going to go like that. And we will say if we're in open mode, the property of background is just going to go to null, right? We do not allow, hey, come on. We don't allow any of that to get set up, right? And then let's see what else did we set on here? This guy had hit test visible and focusable. So both of those are perfectly valid. Let me just make sure nothing else is toggling those. Oh, hit test visible goes to true here. I kind of don't know if this matters. I understand why this is here, is if any of them open, make it clickable. It may not actually matter. If this guy can't become visible, it's Amazon Prime, it's free. Well, it's free for you. Yeah, we may have to change up this hit test visible bit, but let's at least make sure that this much works. So relaunch, because I think with just this property we can probably get ourselves into a good state. I would like this thing to toggle auto magically. There were build errors. What build errors? Overlay background is not valid because it does not have a qualifying name. Sorry, what? Maybe I'm stupid, but background is right there. Target type grid. Setter property. Okay, show me the output. What is Kong show. Thank you. I am adding that to my list. Compile. What am I missing? Am I stupid? Overlay background member is not valid because it does not have a qualifying type. It feels like this is a lie and I'm missing something else, like I've forgot to close something or open something. Okay. Wait, no, this says overlay background. I've missed something. Where is overlay background? Error list. Setter property, overlay background. Oh, that's why. This is a template binding. This is no bueno. So this needs to be binding. Let's see, that'll be path. Let's see, relative source. Relative source. Mode of templated parent, right? That's what it's complaining about. Okay. Reading OP. Open mode. Right. This is the similar situation because this open mode doesn't exist on grid. It exists up on. So this needs to become a data trigger. And this needs to be a binding. And this needs to look a lot more like this. but this needs to be open mode. Yeah, no, the only reason it's not a static resource is we added functionality in one of the latest releases where overlay background is actually a dependency property on this, just to make it easier for people to set it. Okay. All that works so that we can hide a little gray background. It seems hard. Okay. DrawerHost. Okay, so if we do this and open it, right, this guy shows up. So there's that. If we change it to standard, okay, so that at least works. It still blocks me from clicking things, but the close this, right? Okay, so we got more to change, and I assume there is something targeting content presenter, making it unclickable or similar, right? So is enabled false. Yeah, that'll do it. Okay, so this guy here. So I think because we've got a couple properties that are going to be like this, right? Is in one mode, I'm going to want to do one thing, and in another mode, I'm going to want to do something different. And I'm trying to decide the easiest way to do this. Because basically we want a conditional trigger of should this apply. The thing is the storyboards have to be constant, right? But what I don't have to do is I don't have to assign the isEnabled property. So for example, this guy here being enabled or not, right? And I'm willing to bet if I check my other one here, this guy here probably just has those bindings either. I'm in uncharted territory. It probably just has these things here. So any open content presenter is enabled. Where I'm a little interested in how this guy works. Let me just open him real quick. I kind of want to confirm that he does work. Push template, bin, debug. I'm pretty sure it does. Oh, it still overlays. So it pushes the content, but it still does the overlay. That's not what I want. That's dumb. I want half of this, right? I want the slide and the push, but I want to be able to interact with my content. Okay, so this is all dumb. Okay, so let's go back. So I think what I want to do is change what this sets to. Because the only thing that's being set on this content presenter in the storyboards is the isEnabled property. So I think what we're going to do is cheat. Cheat. So first of all, we're going to do some formatting cleanup because this is bothering me a little bit. Right? So the opacity here, I don't know why it's being set because it's not being overridden anywhere. So we don't need that. We'll clean that up. But the only other place, so is enabled, right? These are the only two storyboards. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we are going to just swap this sucker out with content presenter, right? And we will slap in a little style, content presenter style, Points for spelling, points for typing. Typing's hard. Do you want to remove the is enabled set? Yes, in just a minute. I'm going to go and set up the style first, and then I'll change it. So let's see. Target type, content, presenter, because I want to make sure I get the logic right, because I'm pretty sure what we're going to do. So the content presenter is actually this center bit of controls, right? So there's two things that are stopping it. And right now the is enabled is what's preventing the clicks to go through. But when we are in standard mode, we don't want to prevent clicks, right? We'll deal with the push in a moment. But what we want to do here is a style triggers, and I want to go down here and grab this data trigger here, right? And we're going to do this, and we're going to go with setter property is enabled value gets binding tag relative source right, self. Now we'll just eliminate that, right? So by default, what we're going to do is we're going to change these guys up here from is enabled to tag, right? We will toggle that, and then we will have a conditional binding that we may or may not set into there. And then we come down here. Oh, and actually, I think what we want to do is we want to conditionally only set the binding to is enabled when we are in the state of modal, I believe is what we are going for. So when we are in the modal state, we will let the binding apply. Otherwise, no binding apply, always enabled. I think this is what we want. Right? Because people oftentimes get hung up on the idea that storyboards have to be constants. And forget that they don't have to go straight to the target, right? Oftentimes you can put them into something else and either use them as maybe constants to go from 0 to 1 and use those as a factor for multiplication or similar. Like there's plenty of tricks. Let's see. Oh, value cannot be null. Default origin value. Oh, okay. So I think I'm not sure if I can get away with this with the tag property. The other alternative is we can abuse an attached property instead. I kind of don't want to have to go and create attached properties just for this. So I'm going to, let's see. Don't abuse tags. Yes, but it's a tag on an internal element that no one's going to be touching. So let's see here. So where... You know what? You actually make a good point. Should this be... I'm wondering if this guy should have a... I'm just worried because I've made this an enum, not a bool, and I'm very much tying it to a bool. Let's try this. Let's see. I don't know if this is going to play nice. If this doesn't work, I'll try with a static source to see if that gets away with it. Because the issue being that the storyboards want to be able to unset. And so it's very unhappy to have a bool not be a bool. Invalid cast. Yeah, okay. So it's unhappy about the cast. Okay, fine. So... Will you... content presenter Boolean false. X static system Boolean. Yeah, that might be clear. I just find sometimes I get very confused with the element syntax to be able to get in there, or the attribute syntax with the static. And I'm not 100% confident this will even work. Let's see. Unexpected record in BAML stream. Trying to add content presenter. Boy, I have gone off the deep end. I'm wondering if I should just go with an... Oh. I am wondering if I should just create an internal attached property. Welcome to the abyss. Yeah, that's about right. That is about right. Ooh, ooh, oh, 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 oh. Are we going to actually play nicely with the other children? Huh? There's the modal. Standard. Yeah, buddy. It works. It's important to have a good cackle. Oh, this is why I love programming. This right here. What kind of black magic is this? I think I think I am gonna go with your approach there, Robert. Static. Let's see. System : what is it? Boolean. Is it false? How do you do that? That'll get me to that, but how do I get all the way in? I'm gonna go with this for the moment. We'll circle back to it. Okay, so that gets the overlay and the disabled handled. Let's actually get the thing pushing. All right, so let's go back here. So what actually got changed here? So there's the content cover, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. We took care of it. Left drawer. So this guy has margin, left drawer, opacity. Let's go here and find left drawer. So opacity, margin. Right? So that is... That's pretty much the same. Yeah, so that is, I believe, identical. So the difference must be down in the layout of it. So let's see here. So we've got grid, root grid. Go down to here, take a look. Grid, root grid. Ah, that's the kicker, right? So in this situation, so this guy has some column and row definitions set, right? Whereas this is just a single grid and everyone gets to powwow in the same place. I don't know why we have a grid of grids. Right? This one I flattened and took out this extra grid. What is the point of this grid? I don't think it serves a point. Okay, so I think what we do is we do something very similar to what we did a minute ago. And we just do a trigger on it to determine where it needs to go. I'm going to set it like this. So first of all, this grid doesn't appear to be doing anything but slowing stuff down, right? If we reduce our our tree hierarchy, that makes everything go faster. So we'll do that. And then I think what we do is we take... Did I mute myself? I don't think so. I got... OBS shows... Let me test real quick. And see if I hear myself coming through. Stand by. This may get noisy and loud for me. Testing. Okay. I have audio coming through on Twitch. Robert, I think it's on your end. We got at least one other person who can hear me. So I think what we're going to do here is take these grid and column definitions, and we're going to just slap those guys in up here. So this guy here is always in the middle, right? And I assume this adorner decorator, yeah. So he picks up a grid and a row column definition. He always goes in the middle. Okay, so he's the easy one, right? And the content cover, I think, is the same case. No, we're just going to have it cover everything. I think that's legit. Because we're going to hide the thing anyway if it's not being used. So let's flatten some of these out, because that should go like that. That should go there. That should go there. Right, so building that cross out, right? So he's going to sit and span all the rows and all the columns. And then these guys down here, the ones that are the individual drawers, right? So this one, the left drawer, let's make you bigger again. This guy sits in the left column and row and then overlaps that way. And I believe we want to do more or less the same thing. What are we going to change? Because I'm trying to think of the two cases. So in standard, we would certainly do this. In modal, we are going to do... In modal, I think we just shift it over one column into the middle. Do we shift it down? We should probably set... Yeah, I think we're going to have to set all three of them. I don't think there's a way around it. Okay, so let's start here. So out here, let's see. Let's unindent this grid. We probably have a bunch of unindentation problems that I've caused when I took out that other grid. Something like that. Okay, so those all like that, that all like that. So let's go here. So we will do, let's see, grid style, right? And we will do style target type grid, right? And then I guess the question is, which way do we want to do our trigger? And the answer will be whichever way this is. Actually, I think we should default it. Our default state should be modal, because that's going to be the default state of the DrawerHost. So this one, so we will go, so our trigger will be on standard. And we need setters here. So setter property, and let's do grid column, let's see, value. So in modal, we want the column to be 1, right? We want grid row to be 1, and grid column span, no, row span, because this is vertical. Row span to be 1. right? And then we are going to take all of these, and in the case of standard, we are going to switch. Column goes 0, row goes 0, and row span becomes 3. I'm starting to feel like Edge just doesn't like me tonight. I'm trying not to take it personally. Okay. And then I think we rinse repeat for the other ones. But let's test this with just the left side real quick and make sure that this works. And if it does, I think we're close to done. I am wondering if I should take the binding for changing mode and move it outside the dialog host so we can practice toggling it. Well, suffice it to say, that's wrong. Yeah, so that isn't quite right. What? What? Okay, so I want to go back to the demo app just because I'm not entirely clear what I'm looking at. Okay, so the part that confused me is I was seeing left field. Where is left field located? Left field is inside of the left drawer contents, which should have been handled. Okay. Okay, let's start with this. Let's go through and finish out these grid style setters, and then we will adjust. Because assuredly something I've done something wrong here, but it's kind of hard to tell with all of these grids hanging out. So let's just go through and handle each of these real quick. So let's unindent all of you. And then we will address. Okay, so this is the right side. So in modal, this is correct. In non-modal, column becomes 2. Grid row becomes 0. Row span becomes 3. Okay, that works. Which one are you? You are the top. So we'll do the unindent thing. We'll come here. Okay, so top, once again, I think makes sense there. But in the case of standard, column is 0. Wait, row span. This should be column span, right? Column span of 3 to go all the way along the top. Starting at 0, 0, because this is the top drawer. That tracks bottom drawer. And this one is already partly unindented. Paste this. So once again, that's correct. This should be column 2. No, bottom, column 0. Row 2. Column span 3. Okay, let's start here. And then we will see where this gets me and what we need to fix. So hopefully that narrows down a little bit of where the problem is. So, okay, so that. Oh, so maybe that was it. I just needed to clear that up. Is there one of these other ones that has... I wonder why I was seeing left field. Okay, now if we go standard... It worked. X. Yes. Yes. It's interesting, the order of operations here. It's a little hard for me to see, and it actually looks like we might have... I'm trying to tell if there's a problem with the shadows on the bottom here. I think it might be fine. So I do see a shadow from the bottom drawer sitting on top there. I'm pretty sure what I'm seeing here is the extra shadow from the left drawer coming through, because I think this guy sits a little too high. Or it could just be that shadow is extending down below because of the adorner. I think that's the case. That is so beautiful. Okay, now watch this. If we go here and we switch to modal. Yes. Yes, it just works. It just works. See that? And then the backing for the DrawerHost, all it needed was a single dependency property. I approve. I approve. This feels like a much, much cleaner API. Right? And there's the previous pull request had a pinned functionality, which we've kind of implemented in a slightly different way. What is it called? Like light dismiss enabled, more dependency property. There's like a is light dismiss, or maybe did we not enable that? Oh, that might be something that we only enabled for that might be something that was only turned on for the dialog host. Let's look, because I could have sworn there was a is light dismiss or something light dismiss. So open. Dismiss command, show dismiss command. Really? Have a good night, Robert. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I appreciate it. Like I said, I will follow up with you on the Discord stuff, and we can go from there. I appreciate you being willing to help out. Apparently we never implemented a light dismiss flag. Huh. That is interesting. Okay, I think this is actually pretty close to being done. And then I think I am going to just supersede the other PR with this one and call it good. I don't know what else needs to happen. I've been slowly killing off my examples repo by just bringing stuff into the fold, as it were. Because if people find stuff from the samples repo useful, well, that's sort of an indication that it should probably be built into the library. Okay, so I think we can... Yeah, let's PR this beast. Let's PR this. I think this guy here... Yeah, he shows this. This is unfortunately not... I'm wondering if I should move this... Yeah, let's move this open mode out, I think. Let's change that too real quick. I think it makes more sense to be up by this guy. So let's take it out of there. We'll yank you out, which means I can get rid of this extra row and bring it up here. Slap you in there. And then I think what we do is let's see here. Let's just give you a name and target you. X name DrawerHost. Right. Binding, and so this becomes, rather than a relative binding, this just becomes element name. We do that instead. All right, so if we look here, toggle this guy. All right, it'd be kind of cool if this was a toggle, but it works. This is not clear what this is doing. I'm wondering if this should be, because this is text block dialog. This guy here really needs to be like left margin. And I'm wondering if this should be actually pulled out. And I'm not sure if we actually need the other go horizontal with it. Right? And then this no longer needs a bottom margin. How does that look? Closer. How about vertical alignment center? That's a little nicer. It needs a little bit on the right. Maybe like, let's go 8 and see what that looks like. It's not bad. I kind of, with the way it overhangs, let's bump it up a little more. Yeah, that way the pop-up from because the combo box has a little pop-up. That way the shadow doesn't quite block off what this is. So I think what we're going to do is actually just bump this one more to 16, and I think I'm going to just bump you up to 30. Just make it big and obvious that it's separate from that. You know what we could even do? We could even just throw in a separator right there. Let's see. Vertical alignment center, I think, the kicker. No, that is, it's not quite what we need. I think just space between them is probably sufficient. That way you can see it. And I sort of expect that this is going to be one of those dependency properties that people aren't going to be really toggling mid-run. But it's going to be more of which mode do you want your DrawerHost in. I think that's a little cleaner. Let's go that route. Okay, so let's check the PR and see what we got. Okay, so we got a demo bit. We add this in, little white space, white space, white space, white space. That's not a big deal. Great. Let's check our themes. So we've got a theme here. We did some tag abuse on that guy. We adjusted the grid to have some column and row definitions, applied those appropriately. Tag for that, enabled flag for that. This guy here for the content cover gets set up there. He always spans everything. He just may not always be visible based on this. Let's see. These guys get unindented, and we've got the grid and row column definitions set up on them. So we've got one less grid in our visual tree, which is great. Prove DrawerHost. This guy is just one additional dependency property. We should get rid of that auto-generated comment. Get rid of that. While we are in here, we will use expression body from members. Just clean some of these up. This was something I had done on the other branch, but Come on, come on, cursor there. That's what we want. That. Okay, so I don't know if there's much more clean up in here. Use pattern matching. Yeah, let's clean that up to pattern match. Thanks. Any other suggestions you want to make for me, compiler, while we're in here? So I'm just kind of watching my scroll bar here to see if there are anything that jumps out, and I don't see where this other one is. Oh, this var. I don't care too much about that. This guy here, use coalesce expression. That sounds like a great thing. Apply that everywhere in this document. Pretty please. Because we don't need to do the has value bit on a nullable boolean. We can just let it do its thing. That's fine. Clean that up for me. Thanks. Clean that up. Clean that up. Let's see. Just checking to see if it's got more suggestions. I think all of these, that doesn't matter to me. That doesn't matter to me. Those are just naming bits. What are you squawking about here? I don't think there's much to complain about on any of these. Oh, it wants to expression body. Okay, sure. You can do that. While we're in here, we'll just clean them all up. And I think that's good. Okay, so we made a bunch of changes here to that. I think for the most part, they're going to be simple changes, which they are. Great. Created a new enum. Great. Okay. Allowing the DrawerHost to be in either standard or modal. This is to match specification. And then let's go and grab, because of the crash earlier, let's do material design spec. We'll go here. Come on, you can do it. Components and be big. And this is the navigation something drawer. Just grab that. Let's see. And I want to, before I get too carried away, I want to be, I've already got a branch. Great. Create, push, yeah, sure, origin will work. And then I think what I can do is actually whack this one that I created out on my remote. So we'll go ahead and just delete that. Because this is going to supersede it. Get rid of that. Get rid of that locally, and then PR this. And GitHub. Open this guy up. And so I want to quickly look at the other pull request. Because again, this is a very, very, very old one. My goal is to kind of start working my way up from the bottom and clear out all these 4.0 related things to be done. Let's see, this was not necessarily revolving an item. Let's see, this supersedes. Let's see, 789. That should have been easy to remember. Let's see, milestone 4.0 labels. Release notes, because I want to find that one later and create pull request. Treat. Okay, and This was addressed by boom and close and comment. Oh, that was shysta. Okay, update comment. There we go. Okay, so as long as all of the checks pass, which they should, this guy will get merged and we will have one fewer PR out there. So the old ones are slowly going to drop off and we will get the rest of these guys finally cleaned up. So I may go through and just start rebasing and merging some of the old ones to get them into compliance and get off to the races. But with that, I think I'm going to sign off for the night. It is about quitting time, and it is late for me. So thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out. I appreciate it. Hopefully soon, I'm going to chat with Robert, and we'll see about getting a Discord channel off to the races. So if people want to hang out in there as well, that would be great. We'll get everything linked up on the repo and whatnot. So with that, I will say happy coding. Have a good night. See everyone next time.